Hello, and welcome to my attempt to explain the Ichimoku Kinko-Hyo system of trading. Kind of a complicated indicator, there's lots of stuff going on, there's lines everywhere, can be kind of hard to discern what's exactly happening. And let me be clear, I am no Ichimoku expert. I simply have done some research and tried to learn, how it all works, right? And what each line means, how it gets calculated, and kind of the overall picture of what's going on. And I'm going to attempt to convey that back to you, hopefully in a way that's not confusing. We can break each line down, how they interact with each other. We can talk about the overall theory of how it's used, timelines, what trend is, and then we can kind of get into some of the strategies we're building in Acuitas and how you can use those and maybe suggest better ones. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get started. All right. So behind me, you can see a chart I've drawn out, and I've tried to kind of label it and show you what it looks like in Acuitas, so you can be familiar with it from there. Everybody's got their own way to draw a chart, right? So there are 5 lines in the Ichimoku system. There is the Tenkan Sen, the keygen Sen, Senku Span A, and Senku Span B, and there's also the Chiku Span. As far as the numbers that are used to calculate those lines, those are down here. We're going to use the defaults. You'll see those in a lot of places. Ooh, excuse me. I read about that Goichi Hosoda was actually like really into heavy like number theory and wave theory, almost Elliott wave-ish. Okay, so there's probably much deeper levels in this onion of a strategy, but typically most people talk about the lines themselves. And so there was I read a theory that said he came up with these numbers because it had to do with the Japanese work month and week. Which it did line up, but some other people said, no, these are like, almost like Fibonacci numbers, right? He did all this theory and came up with these certain numbers that made sense in his own system. I think the quote was, out of the 10,000 people practicing my system, there's maybe 10 that fully understand it. And I think he was including himself and his grandson, right? So it's a small section of people who probably really understand how it all was designed. So that being said, anyway, we're using these defaults. If you do change those, you can affect the way everything gets drawn and displaced and the way the clouds form. But again, for sanity's sake, we'll stick with defaults. Okay, so let's talk about what each line means. So let's start with the Tenkan Sen. Okay, Tenkan Sen. Sen means line in Japanese. Cool, huh? So the Tenkan line is a fast line. It's almost like a fast EMA. However, it's not really an EMA, and I'll show you why. It's calculated using the high plus the low price divided by 2 over 9 periods. Okay? It pulls that from this conversion. So conversion line is Tenkan. And you'll see it on some charts. They'll call it conversion. They'll call it something else, right? But Tenkan conversion. Okay. So what's interesting about it is that Goichi's idea was, it's a better measure of price activity to take the extremes and average them within a period, as opposed to a simple moving average, which is you're averaging all the prices together. You're not just picking the high and the low. So just thought that was a better way to measure the true price movement by taking the highs and the lows. Okay. The next line we're going to talk about is the keygen line. Keygen Sen. Keygen is calculated the same way as a Tenkan, just uses a different period. So we're talking the highest price plus the lowest price divided by 2 in this case, 26 periods right here. Okay, so that's also called the base. So you've got your fast line and your slow line, and they interact with each other just like an EMA, right? You're looking to see what's happening now compared to the smoother version of that same calculation. And you can see those lines here. Let me take that away. So back here, you can see there's the keygen sen and the Tenkan sen, and the blue Tenkan kind of follows the price pretty well, and then the slower keygen kind of lags behind. Also of note is the fact that you get these flat sections, you know. And so why is that? Well, it's because we're not doing a smooth moving average, simple moving average, right? We're taking this high and the low, and so that really signifies that there's been activity that hasn't been breached, and so and that'll actually show up in the Kumo as well. So we'll talk about that. Okay. So the next line is the Senku lines. Senku Span A. Okay. Senku Span A is calculated by taking the keygen line plus the Tenkan line divided by 2. You see where this is going. Divided by 2. Okay. And it uses displacement. Why displacement? Because on a chart, you'll see that these span lines get pushed into the future. So they're calculated here by taking the Tenkan and the keygen line, right? You're taking these two, dividing it by 2, and you're pushing into the future. And he does that because we're trying to get a sentiment of what's happening or what's going to happen. I know it sounds crazy, right? Like predicting the future, but it tends to work pretty well. It gives you an idea of sentiment because we've taken another average. It's an average of averages of the highs and the lows, right? But that's just one line. Okay, that's the Senku Span A. There's also a Senku Span B. And we'll do that one now. Senku Span B. Okay, this one's calculated a little differently. This is almost like a third version of the Tenkan and the keygen lines in that it's the high plus the low divided by 2, okay, over, divided by 2, over your lagging span, okay? And so that's a 52 period calculation of activity. And that forms this lower line. It's not always lower, so I'll cover that in a second, but it just forms a Senku Span B, okay? So we'll go back here, delete this layer. The last line is the Chiku line. Now, the Chiku Span is interesting. All the really Chiku Span is, Chiku Span, it takes the current close price, right? And it shifts it backwards 26 periods in the past. That is the displacement. Okay. Why does it do that? Well, pretty much it's usually used as a confirmation indicator. It can be used for crosses too, but it's saying, look, is the current price higher or lower than the price displacement periods ago, right? 26. And on the chart, unfortunately, because I tried to clean up this chart a little bit for use on the platform, it's kind of hard to see that line. I made it pretty faint. I might bring it back a little bit, but usually you're only using that to confirm. And so I was trying to kind of reduce the clutter on the screen. But you can see there, let me shift over to another screen and I will show you what that looks like on a website. Whoops. So here I am in trading view. And you can see that, whoops, let me get this going here. So here's my Chiku line. I made it pink so you can see it, right? And you can kind of see how it just pretty much follows prices, but I can make it even easier to see by switching to a line. And you can see here how it's just a close price. This is a line of all the closes pushed backwards in the past. And so when you're comparing Chiku, you can say, okay, currently Chiku is below the price line, the price activity. It's below the chart, bearish signal. So not to get too far ahead, but I mean, really we're below a cloud. Chiku's below price. Tenkan and keygen have crossed below the cloud. These are all extremely bearish signals. And we're on a 15-minute chart, so probably doesn't matter a ton, but those are the kind of things we're looking for. One more thing to note is exactly how the Kumo lines or how the Kumo clouds get formed. And that is a combination of the Senku Span A and the B line. So when the Senku Span A is over Senku Span B, it forms a green bullish Kumo cloud. When A has fallen below B, it's signifying that we are in under a bearish cloud, and that's a red Kumo. And so that's why I labeled it in two places, so you can see that the line is the same line. It's just in relation to each other. And the Kumo clouds are a pretty core piece of the strategy and what you're looking for when you're entering and exiting trades. Okay. So that's pretty much it as far as the lines themselves. So we're going to cut this one, and we're going to go and talk about all the different crossing conditions and how we're going to use these lines to interact with each other now that you understand what they really are. Okay, so now you're familiar with all of the lines in the Ichimoku system. Let's talk about how we can actually use these, how they interact, and the crossing conditions that they're going to make in order for you to do any kind of trading within the system. There's a few majors. There's about 5, and there's obviously there's more. You can do a lot more with it, but we're going to cover what's pretty standard with the system. So the first one's called a Tenkan Cross, and so that is when the Tenkan line crosses the keygen line, whether that's coming from the bottom to the top or coming from the top down below keygen. It's also interesting to note that it depends on where that cross happens. So you can have a pure TK cross, or you can care about where it is in relation to the Kumo cloud, and that's the one we're going to talk about right now. So I built a quick little strategy to show you this, and you can see where, let's look at the entry here. That one's kind of weak, but you can see it did cross over right there. Let's find a better one. Excuse me. There we go. That's a little better. So you can see here, the blue line, our Tenkan, has crossed and finally crossed up over. This is where it enters because the signal's here in backtesting. It's going to go to the next close price, which is here. So cross up confirmed, enter. Now in this case, because it was crossing up and it was inside of a Kumo, that's considered neutral. If it was crossing up and was above a Kumo cloud, like there's probably one over here. Here we go. Here the cross has happened, and it happened above our Kumo cloud here. That's a little more bullish. And conversely, if you are entering like here, down below a Kumo cloud, that's considered a little more weak. Okay, still bullish, but it's a weaker bullish signal when you're comparing where that cross happened in relation to the Kumo cloud behind it. So and it goes the other way around too. Obviously, if the fast is crossing down the slow, which is Tenkan over or below the keygen line, if that happens below a cloud, that's going to be more confirmed bearish. Whereas if it happened above a cloud, you could say, well, yeah, it crossed down, but the Kumo still says there's still this kind of this price support, below it. And you can see some examples here. Maybe. Yeah, here we go. Entry, exit. There we go. So there's an exit below. So that's more confirmed compared to exits that are above. So that is the Tenkan Cross, one way we can look at it. The next one's going to be a keygen cross. So let's pause and take a look at that. Keygen cross. So the keygen cross is a function of how the price is interacting with the keygen line. If I could, I would draw the price as a line as well, but this is the way you're going to see it in the browser, so we'll discuss it as such. So you can see here, if price crosses up over the yellow, that's an entry. When price crosses below the yellow keygen line, then it's an exit. Simple as that. That's all I have for the strategy. It's just what is price doing with this yellow line. And just like with the Tenkan crosses, you can look at it in relation to the Kumo. Price crossing up over a keygen above a Kumo is more bullish than price crossing up over a keygen line below a Kumo or inside of a Kumo like that. Again, there's more ways to confirm it, but some people, we could have it to where it doesn't confirm at all. It's going to give you a lot more noise, in the signal. You can see what we got back. What do we get? 12% on it. So, a little noisy, but that's the way that one works. So let's take a look at the next one, which is going to be how price interacts with the Kumo cloud, otherwise known as a Kumo breakout. All right. So I've redone the strategy to look at what price is doing with a Kumo cloud. And we can see that here. Let's look at the beginning. That's kind of misleading because that's where our time started. So let's not count that one. Here is the first actual entry. Price has crossed up, broken out of the Kumo cloud, and entered. And you can see, yeah, price came down, but it's not selling because price has not crossed down through a Kumo cloud, like over there. So I don't know what kind of gain that was. What was that? Roughly 22%, right? You could have got out earlier, but there's no way for the system to know to get out here in this case, right? It's just we're just saying, look, price and Kumo cloud. And you can see, again, price broke up and doesn't care. This one I have it doesn't care what color Kumo cloud it is. Kumo is Kumo. So in this case, it sees that as another entry position. And you can see, too, how strategies like this might not be so great in a sideways market because you're going to get these basically false breakouts. You know, the system sees it as coming out of a cloud. Great. But if the cloud's super skinny and long, you're not going to get the results that you want. However, sometimes you get these guys too, when it does break up out and stays confirmed. Look, there's another 13% gain there over a week because we're in 1 hour candles. So, I don't want to get too much in the strategy part of it, but it's designed to be more of a patient kind of a thing, right? But that's the way a Kumo breakout looks. So the next one we're going to look at is the Senku Span Cross. All right, so let's take a look now at the Senku Span A and B crossing, otherwise known as a bullish twist or bearish twist. So there's a little more detail we got to get into on this one. If you remember how we talked about the Senku Span being calculated then pushed into the future. When you're looking at the chart, especially when you're looking at the history, you got to remember that anything that uses that type of signal is displaced. And what I mean is, here's this entry, right? But as that chart looked when this entry happened, the chart was actually plotted all the way out to here. And so you can see the reason why it entered here is because I told it when the Senku Span twists and goes bullish, in which case A was on the bottom and then became to the top. When those switched and became a green cloud, I said to enter, right? Conversely, it exited out here, same thing, because the sentiment cloud had shifted, right? And just turned red right there. Boom. And so it's going to exit out. A lot of times that's used as a confirmational indicator, but you can see, I think on this test, again, this is a pretty good test to run on because it's generally bullish, right? When things are generally bullish, it's easier to make money. But I actually beat the buy and hold with just a simple 7 trades over a month, and using just a Senku Span twist, a Kumo twist. So I've built some strategies that usually use that as a confirmation. Something happens, I'm looking to the future and going, what is my sentiment in the future? Is it green? Is it red? Did it just twist? That kind of thing. And you can use that for confirming pretty much anything you want. Or, like I said, in this case, just to show you how it works, I just set the strategy to buy and sell strictly based on what that future, quote unquote, future sentiment is. Okay, so that's 4. So let's go to the Chiku Span Cross. Let me get that booted up and we'll take a look. Okay, so here we have Chiku Span Cross. In here, this is not really a strategy. It's set up that way so we can look at it, but that's not the way I would ever actually use it. But what we're looking for is the Chiku interaction with price. And it's important to remember what we're looking at and when, okay? This period here, and this period here are all the same. They're all from the same period, okay? Same time frame, because this data has been pushed forward. This data has been pushed backwards, okay? Hopefully I didn't confuse anybody. But in any case, this is just the function of the close price. Okay, we're just plotting that close price in the past to see how it interacts with the chart in the past to make things happen now. So if we look at, say, maybe this exit here, Why did this exit? Well, when this was plotted, okay, when this was the newest bar on the chart, these dotted lines didn't exist yet, right? Because the first Chiku is right there. That's where you'd see this, and you'd see the dotted lines coming to here, okay, because that's our close price in the past. And what we're looking at here is this dotted line, this Chiku span, crossed down below the price, which made an exit signal. And so that's what is really important to notice about how this works. And when we talk about confirmation signals is, what is this Chiku doing in relation to everything else on the chart as it's plotted in this time? So that's pretty much all that's going on here. I've got a bunch of entries and exits based on that. I don't even know how it did. 26%. Okay. Well, that goes to show that when things are generally on the upswing, it's hard to lose money, right? It's just how good are you doing? How much money are you making? But that is the Chiku Span cross. So hopefully throughout all of these, you have a better understanding now of not only the indicators themselves, but how they cross and interact and generate signals. The third part of this is going to be talking about chaining those together and making actual strategies and some of the theory behind it, and what happens when you put too many in or too little in or all of that fun stuff. So more of the the nuts and bolts of strategy building now that you understand how all the pieces parts work. Okay. Hopefully that helped. If you had any questions or concerns, just find me on Discord, and happy trading.